Welcome back to Capital Mondays, everybody. It's Dave and Nance. What's up, Nance? How's it going?
Chilling. Looking forward to getting started on some Moseley here. We're not ready to leave chapter 1 behind, so we found more books about chapter 1.
That's right. So
entire books written about the first chapter.
That's right. If that seems a little extreme, folks, it's not. It's actually not. It's not extreme for us to read a whole book about chapter 1 if chapter 1 is the most important chapter. It's also not extreme for someone to write a whole chapter on it if the chapter is being distorted, misinterpreted, especially, if Heinrich is correct, then basically everyone's reading it wrong. If Moseley's correct, then Heinrich is reading it wrong. So, we're going to find out. So, do you know anything about Fred Moseley, Nance?
No, other than that, he's an economist and he's critical of this value for Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
I don't really know a whole lot about him. I think that there's probably like people in the audience right now who know way more about him than we do. Folks, I would love to hear what you have to say about him if you've read other works by him, especially you old Marxists who see us as a couple of young dickheads or whatever, educate us when it comes to something like this. If you've got something to tell us about Fred Moseley, do let us know. But I'm going to read the about the author here, if you want to pull that up on the screen. It's down after the preface. Fred Moseley is Emeritus Professor of Economics at Mount Holyoke College, USA. He's the author of 2 books, The Falling Rate of Profit in the Post-War United States Economy, 1992, and Money in Totality, Marx's Logical Method in Capital and the End of the Transformation Problem. Ooh, so he's another one of these guys who's like on that transformation problem refutation agenda. So for folks not aware of it, the Austrian economist and predecessor to von Mises, named von Boerk, he claimed there was a tremendous, devastating contradiction between Capital Volume 3 and the rest of the Capital Project, and that you could basically narrow in on it by, you can call it the transformation problem, and that kind of stands in for like the problem of how value is transformed into prices. This is something that apparently Marx could not really account for. I don't really like just saying that. Like, I can say all that historical kind of stuff, but I couldn't sit here and lay out for you why it's a problem. And I haven't read von Boerk's 3 volumes on the topic. Do you have anything you would want to add to the transformation problem?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah.
No.
So, and then Andrew Kleiman is someone I mentioned recently, right? He's also a Marxist who has refuted the transformation problem, which means that Fred Moseley and Andrew Kleiman each have apparently solved this problem. I don't know enough about the problem or about how they solve it. Hopefully one day we'll actually get to ask them. In the meantime, I'll keep reading it. So he's also written numerous journal articles on Marxian value theory and Marxian crisis theory and the transformation problem. And Moseley's the editor of 4 volumes of the International Symposium on Marxian Theory, which focuses on the relation between economics and philosophy in Marx's Capital. He was the coordinator of the URPE sessions at the ASSA annual convention from 1995 to 2005. Of course, we're just supposed to know what URPE and ASSA means because, you know, whenever you read Marx's shit, there's always a bunch of acronyms and you're supposed to know what they mean, but I have no idea what those are. But let's get into it. Should we read let's read the preface. I think that it'll be a good sort of grounding thing. It's very short as well. You want to take it away?
Chapter 1 is the most important chapter in Capital, and also the most difficult and the most controversial. It presents the basics of Marx's theory of value and price. An influential interpretation of Chapter 1 in recent decades has been the so-called value form interpretation of Marx's theory of value, according to which the magnitude of value is not determined in production alone, but also depends on supply and demand in exchange. The most important proponent of the value form interpretation today, both in Germany and in the English-speaking world, is Mikhail Heinrich, and Heinrich's work has emphasized Chapter 1. Heinrich's latest book in English is a detailed commentary on the first 7 chapters of Volume 1 of Capital, which is a translation of Wie das Marxische Kapital Lesson, published in 2018. An earlier version of this book on just the first 2 chapters was published in 2008. The publication of an English translation of Heinrich's book is an important event in the Marxian scholarship, and it is important to critically engage with this important book in order to advance our understanding of this critical foundational chapter of Marx's theory. This book will focus on Chapter 1 and will emphasize the quantitative issue of whether the magnitude of value is determined in production alone or also depends on supply and demand in exchange, which has been the main issue in the controversy over the value form interpretation. Chapter 1 of this book presents my interpretation of Marx's theory of value in Chapter 1 of Capital, including a section on each of the 4 sections of Marx's Chapter 1. Chapter 2 presents Heinrich's interpretation of Chapter 1 of Capital and my detailed critique of Heinrich's interpretation, with the same 4 sections. Chapter 3 presents a detailed examination of a 3.5 excerpt from a 55-page manuscript that Marx wrote mostly concerning Section 3, Chapter 1, in preparation for the second German edition of Volume 1 in 1872, which is additions and changes to the first volume of Capital, which Heinrich emphasizes in his book and in previous works to provide textual support for his value form interpretation of Chapter 1. This important manuscript has not yet been translated into English. A translation of the excerpt is included as an appendix in Heinrich's book, and it is almost completely unknown outside of Germany. So there should be considerable interest by Marx scholars in this newly discovered manuscript. A short final chapter summarizes the main conclusions of this book.
That's exciting.
There's some weird typos in here too, so I don't know. I don't know what that was about.
I wasn't looking, I was making notes. So what I get from it is that there's an important new manuscript where Marx is talking about what he's doing. That's good to know.
Yes.
Let's see. So Chapter 2 is going to present Heinrich's interpretation of Chapter 1 of Capital and Moseley's detailed critique of that interpretation. It says interpretation 1. Is that what you mean by like a weird typo?
Yeah, that and then also like he has emphasizes, like he has emphasized.
It's almost like this was rushed to print.
Yeah.
Because I also know, I was also, as I was reading out loud, I corrected for multiple errors. Like when I was just like, or maybe not multiple, but there were errors in the at least one error. Okay, in the about the author section, and it's like, considering that that's in the front matter, it's like they really must not have had a proofreader. So just putting this out there to Moseley, mad respect, man. You need to rush anything out. We got you. Theory Underground's all about rushing stuff to print. We can get it out in like 3 months. You got me. You send it to us. People can hold it in their hands 3 months later. We got you. We don't make that offer to many people, but you know. And of course, it's conditional based on how the rest of this book goes. But
yeah, that might be rescinded.
Yeah, we're gonna be all like, we take it back. We're never associated with this guy. No, he's a world-renowned scholar. I think that this is a serious work, so it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. All right. So there's actually an abstract here, which makes it feel a lot more like an essay than a chapter, but it's also a nice little way of just grounding us out, which is to say, like, give us a... So for those who don't know, in academia, an abstract is really supposed to be like a summary of everything that is in the work itself, like the main thesis and how it will be established. So
it's the TLDR.
It is. In fact, yeah, it is made for people who aren't going to read it. But for us, because we are, it'll also help us, I think. So, abstract. I'll read the title. Marx's theory of the commodity, in italics, in chapter 1 of Capital, in italics. So, yeah. This chapter emphasizes that the subject of analysis in chapter 1 of Capital is the commodity, as the elementary form or cell form of capitalist production, as a representative of all commodities and the properties that all commodities have in common, especially the exchange value and the value of commodities. This chapter presents a detailed review of each of the 4 sections of chapter 1 of Capital. So right out the gate, he's set up this distinction between exchange value and value itself. When I was going down this rabbit hole of people critiquing Heinrich, one of the things I saw somebody say, maybe it was Moseley, maybe it was someone else, is that he reduces value into exchange value. And because I guess I've done that, I don't even know what that means. Is it like, are they saying there is a real value that is transcendent to or beyond both use value and exchange value? And that Marx is just saying that, you know, value gets overtaken by exchange value? Or what? Because whenever I've seen the word value stand alone without the word use hyphen value, I've always taken that to mean exchange value because that's what I was told. I don't know who told me that, but also if you read it that way, it tends to make sense. So I don't know what... I expect he'll get into it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I'm gonna add a note, though, that he makes that distinction out the gate. That was a question, but
yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking. Well, it is confusing and unclear and a bit fucky. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're reading all these books and taking so much time trying to figure it out.
But as far as you would agree with me then? You've just read it that way as well?
Yeah. And I think that's what's going on, but I'm interested to see. Like I think it's even pretty clear in Marx, but also obviously it's not.
Right.
So we'll see what goes on.
Yeah. Section 1 discusses Marx's derivation of the substance of the value of each commodity from the general relation of equality between each commodity and all other commodities, which implies that all commodities possess a common property, which is the objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, Heinrich is saying that no, this objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity is actually some reification of the value form itself. He's saying no, it's the literal, actual, objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity. The magnitude of value of each commodity is the quantity of objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity, which is exclusively determined by the quantity of socially necessary labor time expended in production to produce each commodity. Section 2 emphasizes that the labor that produces commodities has a dual character. Concrete useful labor, as it produces use values of commodities, and abstract human labor, as it produces the value of commodities. Okay. So yeah, I really appreciate, there's a lot of italicization here, but it's like he really wants to be clear. And so yeah, we've got concrete useful labor on the side of use value. We've got abstract human labor as it produces the value of the commodities. Now, the reason that it's the abstract human labor that produces the value of the commodities is because when you're looking at the value of the commodity and thinking about its socially necessary labor time is, if not the exact same thing as abstract human labor, it is like
They're playing together. They're doing this. They're dancing.
Yeah. Section 3 derives money and prices as the necessary form of appearance of the substance and magnitude of value. Marx emphasized that what was exclusively important was to discover the inner necessary connection between value form, value substance, and value amount. Section 4 explains that the origin of the fetishism of commodities is the peculiar social character of the labor that produces commodities, which is that the properties of labor take on the form of the properties of commodities. So when he said that Marx emphasized that what was decisively important was to discover the inner necessary connection between value form, value substance, and value amount, doesn't have a quote. I'm curious if that's just something we actually already read. But then I have a question. So value form, the value form in our society is money. The value substance, what he's arguing, would be the actual, the labor power
Abstract,
that's been...
Yeah, abstract human labor.
Right. And so then the value amount would be the price? Or is it the magnitude of value in this?
I think it would be price, but maybe it is magnitude of value, which obviously gets conflated with price, but is not price.
And that's because something can be sold over. The idea is the price can be above or below its value.
Its actual value, yeah.
Right. Okay. And I think that's going to be a criticism of Heinrich. I think I remember Moseley saying in a video that I watched that's a problem for Heinrich, that something can sell under its value. And I think that The reason that's a problem from the standpoint of Moseley is that Moseley understands Heinrich to be saying that the price is the value because it's like where supply and demand. It's just like, because he's bringing in exchange and supply and demand. So it's not just determined by product. The magnitude of value is not just determined by production, exchange, demand, supply. Like that actually becomes fundamental in the determination of the magnitude of value. I think that Moseley's saying Heinrich's saying that, and so you're saying no, that's not. That's not what Moseley's saying, or that's not what Heinrich's saying.
Yeah, Moseley might be saying that, but
okay.
Heinrich's not saying that, but maybe that is Moseley's argument.
Yeah. Cool. You want to let's take a second here. As far as the notes go, what do we have so far? Chapter 1, Part 1, exchange values. Okay, I'm just gonna write from the abstract major themes. Let's just add some bullet points. And then we'll get to say exchange value is not value. Socially necessary labor time and abstract labor determine value, and the use value is determined by the, what did he call it? Is it the just real labor? Concrete useful labor. There we go.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to add the Marx emphasized what was decisively important was to discover the inner necessary connection between value form, value substance, and value amount. Because part of what I'm interested in, why I asked that in the first place, is like, is that something he's drawing from this previously untranslated thing that Marx had written about chapter 1? All right. You want to read the introduction?
Introduction. The subject of analysis in chapter 1 is the commodity. The title of chapter 1 is the commodity, which suggests that the main subject of analysis in chapter 1 is the commodity. Chapter 1 analyzes the general properties that each commodity shares with all other commodities: use value and exchange value, ultimately value. Why does Marx's theory start with an analysis of the commodity? In order to answer that important question, I will briefly review the opening pages of Marx's introduction to the Grundrisse on the method of political economy. Marx explained in this introduction that his logical method consists of two paths: first from the concrete to the abstract, and then the return path from the abstract to the concrete. The first path begins with the actual concrete, modern bourgeois society, and moves analytically from the chaotic, unexplained concrete toward ever more simple fundamental concepts, ever thinner abstractions, until the investigation arrives at the most fundamental, simplest abstraction, the simplest element of the presupposed concrete totality. The second path retraces the journey from the most abstract element back to the actual concrete, but this time the concrete is explained by means of levels of abstraction, in succession, incorporating more and more elements of the concrete totality. In this way, theory reproduces the concrete in thought. For Marx's theory, the most abstract element of modern bourgeois society, that of capitalism, is the commodity. The other elements of capitalism, money, capital, wage labor, etc., are particular forms of commodities. Therefore, the starting point of Marx's theory of the actual concrete capitalist economy is the commodity. The commodity is the end of the analytical first path and the beginning of the explanatory second path. Marx expressed this conclusion at the end of the Grundrisse in preparation for his first draft of chapter 1 in a contribution to the critique of political economy. The first category in which bourgeois wealth presents itself is that of the commodity. The commodity itself appears as the unity of two aspects. It is use value. Now, how does use value become transformed into commodity? Vehicle of exchange value. Marx attributed this logical method to Hegel, although in an idealist form. Along the first path, the full conception was evaporated to yield an abstract determination. Along the second, the abstract determinations lead towards a reproduction of the concrete by way of thought. In this way, Hegel fell into the illusion of conceiving the real as the product of thought, concentrating itself, probing its own depths, and unfolding itself out of itself by itself, whereas the method of rising from the abstract to the concrete is only the way in which thought appropriates the concrete, reproduces it as the concrete in the mind. But this is by no means the process by which the concrete itself comes into being. 2 years later, Marx began chapter 1 of the contribution as follows. Henceforth, oh shit, that's a note. Okay, yeah. 2 years later, Marx began chapter 1 of the contribution as follows. I'm lost.
The wealth of bourgeois society at first sight. Is that not it? Yeah. Yeah, it starts with the next page.
Okay. The wealth of bourgeois society at first sight presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities, its unit being a single commodity. Every commodity, however, has a twofold aspect, use value and exchange value. Thus, the subject of analysis in chapter 1 is a unit of a single commodity, a representative commodity, that is used to analyze the main properties that all commodities have in common, use value and exchange value. In the preface to the contribution, Marx referred back to his introduction on method in the Grundrisse. A general introduction, which I had drafted, is omitted, since on further consideration, it seems to me confusing to anticipate results which still have to be substantiated, and the reader who really wishes to follow me will have to decide to advance from the particular to the general. Several years later, in 1863, Marx wrote the following in section 1 of a manuscript entitled Results of the Immediate Process of Production. Section 1 is entitled Commodities as Products of Capital. As the elementary form of bourgeois wealth, the commodity was our point of departure, the prerequisite for the emergence of capital. On the other hand, commodities appear now as the product of capital. The commodity that emerges from capitalist production is different from the commodity we began with as the element, the precondition of capitalist production. We begin with the individual commodity viewed as an autonomous article in which a specific amount of labor time is objectified and which therefore has an exchange value of a definite amount. Then, in Volume 1 of Capital, Marx described the subject of Chapter 1 in essentially the same way as in the contribution, continuing to emphasize that his subject is a single commodity as a unit of the immense collection of commodities produced by capitalist production. The wealth of commodities in which the capitalist mode of production prevails appears as an immense collection of commodities. The individual commodity appears as its elementary form. Our investigation, therefore, begins with the analysis of the commodity. In his preface to the first German edition of Volume 1, Marx describes the commodity with an analogy to anatomy. The commodity is the economic cell form of bourgeois society. The study of an organism in anatomy starts with an individual cell and an analysis of the general properties that each individual cell shares with all other cells of this organism: structure, function, behavior, etc. Similarly, Marx's theory of capitalism starts with the economic cell form of an individual commodity and an analysis of the general properties that it shares with all other commodities: use value and exchange value, substance of value, magnitude of value, and form of appearance of value. Marx said that the analysis of the commodity seems to turn on minutiae, but so does microscopic anatomy. Finally, in his notes on Adolf Wagner, written in 1879 through 1880,
Marx described the starting point of his theory in another very clear statement, which begins as follows. What I start out from is the simplest social form in which the labor product is presented in contemporary society, and this is the commodity. And Marx continued with a brief summary of section 1 of chapter 1, which serves as a good introduction to section 1. I analyze it, the commodity, and right from the beginning in the form in which it appears. Here I find that it is, on the one hand, in its natural form, a useful thing, alias a use value. On the other hand, it is a bearer of exchange value. And from this viewpoint, it is itself exchange value. Further analysis of the latter exchange value of the commodity shows me that exchange value is only a form of appearance, the autonomous mode of presentation of the value contained in the commodity. And then I move on to the analysis of the latter. By way of further introduction to Marx's logical method in chapter 1, I will briefly describe the fundamental concepts in terms of which Marx's analysis of the commodity in chapter 1 is carried out. The substance of value, the objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity, the magnitude of value, the quantity of objectified abstract human labor, and the form of appearance of the substance and magnitude of value, exchange value, and money prices. The subtitle of section 1 of chapter 1 is Substance of Value, Magnitude of Value. And the title of section 3 is the value form, or exchange value. Section 1 of chapter 1 begins with the form of appearance of value, the exchange value of a commodity, and derives the inner substance of value, objectified abstract human labor contained in the commodity. Section 1 also defines the magnitude of value as the quantity of objectified abstract human labor contained in the commodity, which is exclusively determined by the socially necessary labor time expended to produce it. Section 2 further clarifies the distinction between abstract human labor and concrete useful labor, and also clarifies the meaning of socially necessary labor time, in particular explaining how qualified or skilled labor is taken into account. Section 3 then begins with the presupposition of objectified abstract human labor as the substance of value and the quantity of objectified abstract human labor as the magnitude of value, as derived in sections 1 and 2. And 3 derives money and prices as the necessary form of appearance of the presupposed substance and magnitude of value. Section 4 explains the origin of the fetishism of commodities, according to which commodities seem to possess value by themselves independently of the labor that produced them. Marx clearly summarized this logic in 2 places in the first edition of chapter 1. At the end of his derivation of the substance and magnitude of value, he stated, "Now we know the substance of value, it is labor. We know the measure of its magnitude, it is labor time. The form which stamps value as exchange value remains to be analyzed." And at the end of his derivation of the form of value in the first edition, he stated, "What was decisively important, however, was to discover the inner necessary condition between value form, value substance, and value amount. That is expressed conceptually to prove that the value form arises out of the value concept."
Let's stop there.
So that is from...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to be like, let's stop there. And you were stopping there. So what were you going to say?
That's from whatever, this 1976, what is that?
Yeah, let's figure that out.
Is that the notes and additions and changes or whatever?
Okay, so I clicked on it. It just takes you right to the end of the document. Click it. I think you can, well, I don't know if you, I don't think you can click your way back to where you were, but yeah. It's nice that it takes you there. I like it when it takes you back, but
yeah.
So yeah, it just says the commodity in A. Dragstedt edition, Value Studies by Karl Marx, pages 1 through 48. That's gotta be it.
Yeah.
Capital. Okay, so that's. Is that damning? Does that seem pretty damning for Heinrich?
I don't think so.
Like
I mean, not necessarily.
Like these are the kinds of questions that I would want to ask him. So in this document for Capital Mondays, we actually have a section for people. Actually, wait. No, where I made that is in a different document. I need to add it into the Capital Mondays document. So, folks, what we did was we took a list of Marxists we want to interview about various things, not just this. There's questions that we want to ask all of them, and then there's questions that we have for specific ones. And of course, when it comes to Heinrich, we're going to have some questions based on Moseley's work. So I'm going to go ahead and import all of that, Nance, into... I'm going to put it at the top of this document. Okay. So now, let's go ahead and, for Heinrich... Well, I guess... Yeah, let's look at it. So, when he says that the bold emphasis is by Marx, like that's a lot of bolding in these quotes. Let's start with the first one. Now we know the substance. I'll just, for people listening, I'll just like really emphasize the words that are bold. I'm not going to say it. Now we know the substance of value. It is labor. We know the measure of its magnitude. It is labor time. The form, which stamps value as exchange value, remains to be analyzed. Yep, there you go. Value is not the same thing as exchange value. I mean, it's right there. It's fucking weird, man. It's tripping me up. I can't wait to reread chapter 1, paying close attention to the fact that those two things are not the same thing. Fuck. Then he says, at the end of his derivation of the form of value in the first edition, he stated, what was decisively important, however, was to discover the inner necessary connection between value form, value substance, and value amount, as in expressed conceptually, to prove that the value form arises out of the value concept. Expressed to prove that the value form arises out of the value concept, which would be like money comes out of. It's not that we come up with a concept of value based on money. The point is, logically, the value form money the value form money comes from the value concept. Seems to be what he's saying here. And this is the larger version of the quote that we had already commented on from the preface, or the abstract in the introduction. Now we know the substance of value. It is labor. We know the measure of its magnitude. It is labor time. The form which stamps value as exchange value remains to be analyzed. That doesn't mean, without Nance being present, I can't exactly ask him what he meant by this is not a problem for Heinrich, but I'm going to give one of my guesses as to why it might not be a problem for Heinrich, and that would be like, it's kind of like, yeah, but this is Marx summarizing what he has laid out. But it'd be pretty easy to have him laying out what he's laid out and with that, but we're missing the like some larger context, right? Because part of the thing is he's working through this, he's unfolding it, right? And so part of what he's doing is summarizing how it works and what people believe about how it works. And I think Heinrich's point is that there is a reification occurring of the value form via the idea of socially necessary labor time. And Moseley's obviously using this to say, no, that's not. No, Marx is just straight up saying that that we know the substance of value, that it is labor, right? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think I'm going to keep coming back to it's very complicated. It's a very convoluted issue. So any simple smoking guns, I don't think we're going to find.
Cool. I'm just happy to be able to, I think at this point, thus far, say what the issue is in my own words. And I think I just did. Folks, let me know in the comment section or on the forum or in emails or something if you think that I'm wrong here. Part of why we do this whole process for you all, is so you can follow along. Ultimately, you can return to a section and you can hone in on it, and then you can be like, oh, you ran with this in that one direction. You're missing something.
Yeah.
Oh, we're about to get into some shit.
I think the abstract labor being the sole source of value, I still don't think, even in these words, I don't think Marx is saying that. I think Marx is still leaving room for more going on behind the scenes. In a sense, that abstract human labor is the source of this value, but to just say concretely it's the sole source, I don't think Marx ever does that. And I maybe Moseley is doing that, but I don't even think, maybe we'll see. I haven't read Moseley, so maybe that is ultimately only what he's saying. I don't know.
Cool. This logic of the derivation of the form of appearance of value from the substance and magnitude of value was influenced by Hegel's logic of essence and appearance, according to which the essence must appear as something other than itself. Patrick Murray has argued convincingly that Marx's logic in Chapter 1 is informed by Hegel's essence logic. So that's all he's going to say about Patrick Murray for now. It looks like, just looking at the page, down the page, he just brings Patrick Murray in right here and then moves on. All I know about Patrick Murray is that he is also a value form Marxist. So he is, in a sort of sense, maybe we'll say this playfully, an enemy of Moseley's. And so, so basically Moseley's being charitable and saying, hey, Murray's right. Or at least he's argued convincingly that this science of logic kind of influence is playing itself out in Chapter 1. He's given some credit where it's due. It's very charitable, or very kind of you. I don't know, respectful, whatever. In Heinrich's Appendix 3, he quotes the second passage above and argues that although Marx coquetted with Hegel's terminology, the value form arises out of the value concept, he did not follow Hegel's conceptual speculation. However, Heinrich misses the main point that even though Marx did not follow Hegel's idealist conceptual speculation, Marx's theory of the value form is a materialist version of Hegel's logic of essence and appearance, in the sense that the materialist characteristics of the value form, money and price, are derived from the materialist characteristics of the value concept, objectified, abstract, human labor. All right, so in Appendix 3, Heinrich is using the above quote. He said the second passage above, which was what was decisively important, however, was to discover the inner necessary connection between value form, value substance, and value amount, as in expressed conceptually to prove that the value form arises out of the value concept. What is Moseley saying Heinrich's doing with this? Why is that a I don't get why this is a... What's the problem?
Marx's theory of the value form is a materialist version of Hegel's logic of essence and appearance, in the sense, so appearance as like surface, appearance as like necessarily arising from the character of the things themselves. I don't know. Fuck.
Heinrich misses the main point. So, is it that Moseley thinks Heinrich thinks Heidegger Marx is doing like an idealism by saying that value comes out of is it kind of like he thinks, oh, well, if value becomes like this free floating thing separate from production, then that's idealism? Is that kind of what he's getting at? Like, I want to make a note about this, but I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, like it sounds to me like the opposite. Like Moseley is doing this idealist thing where value is this like necessary thing that arises out of these interrelationships. Like an ideal essence that emerges. Marx did not follow Hegel's idealist conceptual speculation. However, Heinrich misses the main point. Even though Marx didn't do this idealist conceptual speculation, and then here he's positing Marx's theory of value is a materialist version of Hegel's logic of essence and appearance. So that to me sounds like Moseley is making an idealist assertion, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
Wait, how does that become... Isn't he literally saying this is...
This is a material idealism is what it sounds like.
Oh, right. Well, so... what I take that to mean is, okay, so the idea that the essence must appear as something other than itself, this is a principle of dialectics that is intrinsic to the Hegelian enterprise, and Patrick Murray argued that convincingly, and it seems like Moseley's convinced by that. But the point that Heinrich misses is that just because the essence must appear as something other than itself doesn't mean that for Marx the essence of value is going to be immaterial. That's what I'm taking it to mean. Like he's saying it's still materially based because it's just the basic idea that Marx turned Hegel on his head. put his feet back on the ground, so to speak. So let's just keep going. I'll just write this. We are confused about what Moseley is saying, Heinrich is saying or not saying about Patrick Murray's thing he said about
About what Marx said. About what Hegel said.
About what Marx did with what Hegel said about essence and appearance. Okay, let's ask Patrick Murray what the fuck he's talking about. I'm just gonna go ahead and add that as a question for Patrick Murray. I'm looking forward to having really detailed questions for these guys that they don't normally get asked. Like normally it's just like, oh, come on our platform and be seen. It's like, no, we're gonna be like, you spent paragraphs like laying this out. Like, what's the why it matters? What does it mean? Where's the mic? What does it all mean? Yeah, where's that Mikey? The point is, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like there's necessary quilting points just missing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, but he is going to use the word point in this next paragraph. One final point in this introduction. Like he's acting like that last point was a big point, and it's like, but it doesn't hit like a point, and that's why we're confused. But okay. So one final point in this introduction. In this reexamination of chapter 1, I will emphasize the quantitative dimension of Marx's theory of value, as in the quantitative determination of the magnitude of value of commodities by presupposed quantities of socially necessary labor time requited to produce them. Does that just mean required? Is it just a bad OCR?
That's a typo.
Okay. Another typo.
Yeah.
They should have like the Theory Underground boys did a proofread edition that they like roll out after we're done. Anyway, so yeah, the socially necessary labor time required to produce an item is how the quantitative determination of the magnitude of value functions, is kind of what he's saying. He's going to get into that in sections 1 and 2, and the quantitative determination of the abstract prices of commodities by the presupposed magnitudes of their value in section 3. The most important disagreement between Heinrich and myself is whether the magnitude of value is determined solely by socially necessary labor time and production prior to and independent of exchange, or also depends on supply and demand in exchange after production. But I will not neglect the qualitative dimension. A quantity is a quantity of something. So the qualitative dimension is the fact that there's actually a thing there, he's saying, and that the quantity is like the quantity of the amount of value that it has. Prices are trying to approximate, like it's a guesstimate of the socially necessary labor time of the thing. Now, would he at least say that when it comes to exchange, which is to say buying and selling, selling, that the purchasers are also thinking in some sort of abstract way about socially necessary labor time? Is he saying, does that matter? I don't know. So I'm going to go back to that prior. So can you pull that as a quote and paste it in there? The most important disagreement between Heinrich and myself is whether the magnitude of value is determined solely by socially necessary labor time and production prior to and independent of exchange. So because I think from his standpoint, you could say, like this water bottle I'm holding, it has an objective value. We subjectively try to guess what that is. Supply and demand might factor in, whatever, but it has an actual value. And just because it might not realize that value because maybe it never actually gets sold or too many were produced and so a whole bunch got hidden in a basement somewhere, like it does. The point is that even down there in the basement when they're not technically on the market, they have an actual value. Is that what he's saying? Does this have real value? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he would be saying that like they do have like an actual value that's been imbued in them due to the process of production.
Cool. And Heinrich's definitely saying no.
No, he's saying value is is this social construct that's determined socially, and Moseley might be saying, yeah, okay, value can be this social construct, but it's determined by the abstract human labor time that's gone into producing it, which is the labor theory of value. Like,
yeah, straight up.
All value is created in the production through labor.
Let's make some notes. Let's just add some notes here. One sec. We're back from break. And what do you see there, Nance? It's it.
Well, golly gee willikers, it looks like it looks like there's a whiteboard up there.
Hey, yeah!
Woo! Yeah, we got it. So we were gone for we had this video paused for a while so that I could get this set up, but there you go. That's the first time I've done it. Everybody, if you're in the deep end with us for Capital Mondays, every once in a while you'll find out something, some of the lore nobody else knows about. Like this. Like most people won't know about that shit for a while.
For a while now, and it's actually, I'm stoked on it. I'm happy it's done. It is going to be the shit.
Yeah, now we're just gonna put it in the corner so that we can see it up there, not just because it inspires us, but because we're just running a test on how long the camera will stay on.
Camera ink.
Yeah. All right, so section 1.1, section 1, the substance and the magnitude of the value of the commodity. Actually, yeah, Nance is going to be doing a lot more reading. I'm going to be doing a lot more note-taking, so take it away.
All right. The title of section 1 of chapter 1 is The Two Factors of the Commodity: Use value and value, substance of value and magnitude of value. One can see clearly that the subject of section 1 is the commodity, and these two fundamental properties or factors that each commodity shares with all other commodities. I don't think that's great writing. So he's saying that substance of value and magnitude of value are properties that each singular commodity shares with all other commodities, is what he's saying. It's not clearly written. It also doesn't take that long to get there, but I was tripped up on it. So I'm...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. As we have seen above, the commodity that Marx analyzes in chapter 1 is a unit commodity that represents all the commodities produced in the capitalist commodity economy as a whole, and the properties that all these commodities have in common. The commodity is the economic cell form or the elementary form of a commodity economy. I have already quoted the first two sentences of section 1. The wealth of commodities in which the capitalist mode of production prevails appears as an immense collection of commodities. The individual commodity appears as its elementary form, Our investigation, therefore, begins with the analysis of the commodity. Metaphorically speaking, it is as if Marx holds in his hand, or under an analytic microscope, a representative commodity that has been produced but not yet exchanged. A quarter of wheat, for example. And he analyzes the two fundamental common properties that the representative commodity shares with all other commodities: use value and exchange value. Use value is a property of the products of labor in all societies. Exchange value, on the other hand, is a unique property only of commodities, products of labor that are produced for exchange. In the form of society to be considered here, they, the products of labor, are also the material bearers, Träger, of exchange value. In the next paragraph, Marx comments that the exchange value appears to be simply the quantitative proportion in which one commodity exchanges with another commodity. With Samuel Bailey in mind, a leading critic of Ricardo's labor theory of value, Marx comments that the exchange value of a commodity seems to be accidental and relative, and therefore an intrinsic value, an exchange value that is inseparably connected with the commodity inherent in it, seems to be a contradiction in terms. Now, just a little interjection. They use accidental in a way that, like, it's not... when someone says accidental, here being dumb Americans for the most part, we're not all dumb Americans. Actually, probably most of you listening probably aren't dumb Americans, but me being a dumb American, I hear the word accidental and I think, oh, I accidentally dropped a rock on my shoe and it hurt, like, or some dumb bullshit like that. But like accidental isn't, like, accident implies like, oh, I accidentally did something because I'm an idiot and I bumbled. But like accidental in this sense is like more like emergent than what the connotation of the word accidental would be. And I don't know. I wish they used a better word.
Not essential.
Non-essential. There we go.
Yeah.
But I know it can tend to trip up.
No, it's good. Good point. And you're right. Most of the people who really get enjoyment from watching us are just there. It's because they're so much better than us. They get enjoyment from watching us struggle on something that they have an easy time with. And the reason that they don't help in the comments is because they just like to feel superior, but they don't want to come across as assholes. So we love you guys. We get it. We understand.
Yeah, you got to get that juice sauce.
Yeah, we'll be your little, court jesters, I guess. That's what it'll be like in Europe for sure, dude. That's where most of those viewers are mostly there. Our idiot ones are all from Canada, and then our genius ones are all from fucking Europe. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Oh, however, Marx says, let us consider the matter more closely. The next paragraph is an important paragraph in which Marx elaborates that each commodity, for example, a quarter of wheat, possesses not just one exchange value with one other commodity, but instead has many exchange values, which means that each commodity is exchangeable with all other commodities in definite proportions. And since exchange is in principle assumed to be the exchange of equivalents, all the exchange values of a quarter of wheat are equal to a quarter of wheat, which in turn implies that all these exchange values of a quarter of wheat are themselves equal to each other. A given commodity, a quarter of wheat, for example, is exchanged for X boot polish, Y silk, or Z gold, etc. In short, it is exchanged for other commodities in the most diverse proportions. Therefore, the wheat has many exchange values instead of one, but X boot polish, Y silk, or Z gold, etc. each represent the exchange value of one quarter of wheat. Therefore, X boot polish, Y silk, Z gold, etc. must, as exchange values, be mutually replaceable or of identical magnitude. Marx then argues further that it follows from the general relation of equality of all commodities that each and every commodity must possess a common property, a content, that determines their exchange values, i.e., that determine the quantities in which they are objectively considered to be equals.
Oh, yeah.
It follows from this that firstly, that the valid exchange values of a particular commodity express something equal. And secondly, exchange value cannot be anything other than the mode of expression, the form of appearance of a content distinguishable from it. This is a very important conclusion that already provides a partial answer to Bailey and to the question that Marx posed in the previous paragraph. The general relation of equality between all commodities implies that each commodity does indeed possess an intrinsic content. Marx explains in the next several paragraphs that the nature of something equal that is expressed in the exchange value of commodities, i.e. the nature of the content, whose form of appearance is exchange value. The next paragraph is another important paragraph in which Marx illustrates this general relation of equality between each commodity and all other commodities with a specific relation of equality between two commodities, corn and iron, which he expresses as a simple equation and comments that this equation signifies that a common element of identical magnitude exists in the two different things. Let us now take two commodities, for example, corn and iron. Whatever their relation of exchange may be, it can always be represented by an equation in which a given quantity of corn is equated to some quantity of iron. For instance, 1/4 of corn equals X carat weight of iron. What does this equation signify? It signifies that a common element of identical magnitude exists in the two different things, in 1/4 of corn, and similarly in X carat weight of iron. The next paragraph illustrates the necessity of a common property of commodities that follows from their general relation of equality with a geometric example of a comparison of the areas of rectilinear figures.
Actually, let's. I should be following along. I am taking notes, but instead of focusing on the notes, I should be focusing on. Let's see.
We have the book.
Can I follow along? Because I would like to use a different color of pen to keep track of what he's saying as opposed to what Heinrich is saying. So
Heinrich.
Yeah. So let's see. Is this when it says M127?
Yeah.
We're talking about this volume? We're talking about this edition, I mean? All right. And this is just the whole part about, like, yeah, everything can be traded with everything else, just in different quantities. It's not like... It feels like he really belabors the point in this chapter. And so now of course, Moseley's going to have to do the same thing. So but is there something that he's done in the last couple of pages that is more than just reiterating the fact that every commodity has this magical capability to be exchanged with any other thing?
Yeah, he seems to be just kind of reiterating that. Where does he talk about Bailey?
At the top, the top. No, 9 below. Yeah, right, top, right there.
Yeah, with Samuel Bailey, a leading critic. Marx comments that their exchange value. I would be interested in reading maybe more on this.
It's 126 on the previous page.
Yeah.
Trying to see where that is. Where's Bailey on this page?
So, and that's the thing. Bailey's not in. Marx doesn't explicitly state Bailey.
Okay.
So that's why. I don't know. It's just with Bailey in mind, Marx comments that Marx doesn't explicitly say I have Bailey in mind, at least right here. So other than just being interested in that, there's nothing here to disagree with or,
I'm just gonna write in the margin. Moseley says this is responding to Bailey
Well, it's responding to Bailey, responding to Ricardo.
Oh, Bailey's critique of Ricardo.
Yep.
Theory of labor.
Labor theory.
Yeah. All right. And an intrinsic value, an exchange value that is inseparably connected with the commodity inherent. So is he saying that there's no...
That's the mysterious thing, right?
No, but this italicization is not Marx's. But usually he...
Correct.
Moseley... Oh, that's right. So he will bold the things that Marx is emphasizing, and he will italicize the things that he is... Okay, right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Got to get up on that.
So let's see. This is where he is saying Traeger. In the form of society to be considered here, they are also material bearers of exchange value that is inseparably connected with the commodity inherent in it. Seems a contradiction in terms. Let us consider the matter more closely. Yeah. Anyway. The next paragraph illustrates the necessity of a common property of commodities that follows from their general relation of equality with a geometric example of a comparison of the areas of rectilinear figures. And this is, again, 127. A simple geometric example will illustrate this. In order to determine and compare the areas of all rectilinear figures, we split them into triangles. Then the triangle itself is reduced to an expression totally different from its visible shape. Half the product of the base and the altitude. In the same way, the exchange values of commodities must be reduced to a common element, of which they represent a greater or lesser quantity. So, yeah, that here Moseley says the next paragraph illustrates the necessity of a common property. Like that is the problem that Marx is laying out here. This mysterious third thing that all things share in common. Marx argues in the next paragraph that the common property of commodities that determines their exchange values cannot be the useful properties of commodities because the relation of equality between commodities is characterized precisely by its abstraction from their use values. And Marx then concludes in the next paragraph that only one possible common property remains, that all commodities are products of labor. If then we disregard the use value of commodities, only one property remains, that of being products of labor. But even the product of labor has been transformed in our hands. It is no longer a table, a house, a piece of yarn, or any other useful thing. All its sensuous characteristics are extinguished, nor is it any longer the product of the labor of the joiner, the mason, or the spinner, or of any other particular kind of productive labor. With the disappearance of the useful character of the products of labor, the useful character of the kinds of labor embodied in them also disappears. This, in turn, entails the disappearance of the different concrete forms of labor. They can no longer be distinguished, but are altogether reduced to equal labor, human labor in the abstract. There are 2 points to emphasize about this paragraph. In the first place, the second sentence uses the metaphor that he is holding a representative commodity in our hands. And Marx's analysis has transformed the commodity, which means that Marx's theoretical understanding of the commodity has been transformed. The many different kinds of use values are now disregarded because they cannot explain the general equality of all commodities. And as a result, the many different kinds of useful labor embodied in commodities are also disregarded. And all the different kinds of concrete useful labor have been reduced by Marx's analysis to equal labor, human labor in the abstract. In the second place, Marx refers in this paragraph to 2 different states of existence of abstract human labor. Objectified abstract human labor embodied in commodities as the property of commodities that determines their exchange values, and living abstract human labor expended in production to produce the commodities. Objectified abstract human labor embodied in commodities is the result of living abstract human labor expended in production. Marx then concludes his derivation of objectified abstract or homogeneous human labor as the substance of value in the following well-known paragraph. And this is page 128. Let us now look at the residue of the products of labor. There is nothing left of them in each case but the same phantom-like objectivity. They are merely congealed quantities of homogeneous human labor, i.e., of human labor power expended without regard to the form of its expenditure. All these things now tell us is that human labor power is expended to produce them. Human labor is accumulated in them. As crystals of this social substance, which is common to them all, they are values, commodity values.
See, I think that there's a way of reading this where it like instantly seems like a checkmate of Heinrich, but it's like having followed Heinrich through his work. No, like this argument is like Marx is developing something. And so when he says something like this, he's summarizing where we're at. Dialectically, he is unfolding the commodity. He's taking you into the common sense assumption that, oh yes, we're just making some recourse to this abstract, kind of labor. And it's like, but that's the fetish right there, isn't it? Is it not?
That is the fetish. And that's why I don't think this is Moseley's argument. Like I'm hoping he goes somewhere else. I don't know. Because that's it. That is the fetish.
This is like we were joking about doing React content before, but I feel like we only really get to start doing React content at this point. Like this is where I actually feel like, wait, is this it? Like, okay, let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a note saying it seems like he is arguing that because Marx is saying on capital 1, how do I do this? Capital V1 page 128. I'm just doing the CV1P128. That's how I'll do that.
Yeah, we'll totally know what that means later.
Right? Well,
Yeah.
This time I'll go ahead and just, capital volume page. Leave that there. Okay. We can put a key. We can make a key for our abbreviations later. Okay. But that is the key for now. Okay. Now, so it seems like Moseley is arguing that because Marx is saying on this page that the abstract measure, or is that right? Would we say measure or referent between standard measure? What's the right word here?
I would say
using that geometry example, like the thing that they're being measured against.
I would say referent.
Yeah, the abstract referent being measured against by all commodities is, and I'm going to use the direct quote, human labor in the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
We can therefore conclude that socially necessary labor time / abstract labor. I still want to really be able to say what the difference is there. Therefore conclude that socially necessary labor time / abstract labor is the determinant of value.
Yes.
Yeah. but that doesn't square as a real refutation of Heinrich, because we just read him and we know this is building up to something, i.e. the fetish nature or the fetish quality of the value form.
The spectral, you could even say like the spectral, because Heinrich, I think specifically called it like the mystery, or this, I don't know, the mysterious specter or something.
No, dude, I'm just gonna write fetish / spectral / phantom / mysterious quality of the value form, because all of those words got used, including in like right here, actually, right? Didn't he just say the phantom, like, or what?
Phantom like objectivity. They are merely congealed quantities of homogeneous human labor.
And Heinrich had emphasized that note, that phantom-like, and so Moseley's not going to acknowledge that right now, which means that he'll probably wait.
Yeah, which is weird.
Like, this is supposed to be a direct refutation of Heinrich, but I think what Moseley's doing is saying, I don't want to get shit twisted. I will give you my interpretation. I'm not going to sit here and be like, Heinrich's emphasizing that and this and the other, because he's not going to come back to Heinrich until the chapter where he gives Heinrich the treatment. So,
yeah, he did say that.
Yeah.
This is also the conclusion of Marx's answer to Bailey, that commodities do indeed possess an intrinsic value that determines their exchange values with other commodities. The objectified abstract human labor contained in them, which is the result of the living abstract human labor expended to produce them. The substance of value is described as a phantom-like objectivity because the objectified abstract human labor contained in each commodity is not directly observable as such. More on this important point below.
Okay.
Marx's adjective, congealed, in this passage is important and informative. It's a metaphor for a change in the state of existence of homogeneous human labor from a fluid state to a solid state, such as from water to ice. Thus, in terms of this metaphor, the homogeneous human labor power expended in the production of a commodity is the fluid state, and is changed as a result of production into the solid state of objectified homogeneous human labor accumulated in the commodity. In the next to last sentence of the above paragraph, there is homogeneous human labor in both its fluid state, homogeneous human labor expended in production, and also in its solid state, objectified homogeneous human labor accumulated in commodities. And the result is crystals in the last sentence. The adjective congealed suggests that for any single commodity, the change of state from the fluid state of homogeneous human labor to the solid state of objectified homogeneous human labor occurs in the production of the commodity and does not require an exchange relation with another commodity.
Wait, where? So I was making notes, but where's that last line? Yeah, let's highlight that. And the results, crystals in the last sentence, the adjective congeal suggests that for any single commodity, the change of state from the fluid state of homogeneous human labor to the solid state of objectified homogeneous human labor occurs in the production of the commodity and does not require an exchange relation with another commodity. I mean, I love the metaphor of congealing, but Heidegger, Marx is still doing this as if thing. He's in this as if mode. Dude, this is what drives me crazy. The reason I keep saying, this was the second time I've slipped and said Heidegger in this recording. And it's like, but why? It's because I'm struggling with both of them right now. Both of them are having this problem where people keep taking them at a specific moment in their thinking and seeing, well, look what they said in this moment. And it's like, You can't think about the moment outside of the whole.
Yeah.
And so it seems like what he's doing is steel manning Ricardo before he imminently critiques Ricardo. So it's like, yes, it does make sense. The Ricardian's position makes a buttload of sense. Everyone can agree it makes sense that labor is like this fluid state that congeals into like objective, like useful things that have like some kind of inherent intrinsic value. Yeah, it is commonsensical. It has a phantom-like nature of being objective even. But that's the whole point. So I think he should look at this point, Moseley. It's hard to read this. Like, I think that if I was on my own and reading this 5 years ago, I would have just thrown the book at this point. I would have just been like, dude, fuck this shit. And I would have just gone and I would have gone on to the next thing. But we're trying to make this a useful value. And we're also, I'm going to keep being charitable because there is this other chapter where he gets into Heinrich, but he should have led with the Heinrich chapter. That's all I'm saying. I think you lead with that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if this is his position, hold on, goddamn,
we got dogs. We got dogs up in here. Oh, it I don't know when it actually went dark, but the screen officially went dark. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna go acknowledge Anne's existence. Hello.
Hello. I gotta leave.
Come on over here.
look at my shirt, and
Look at Anne's shirt. It says I would prefer not to. Oh, look at. You see his shirt?
Oh,
here, I'll let you engage.
my gosh.
With,
Ow.
Oh, sorry. Here, I'll let you.
You make that? Or did like you
Oh
find
my-
a company
it was a
that-
Christmas present.
That is so good. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
That's such a good
That's
shirt.
awesome.
Yeah. That's a good commodity right there, you know?
there we go.
That commodity
There's a
has
lot of value in it.
mostly just use value because it actually that's the thing. It is a commodity, but the thing is could you turn around and resell it? Probably not for
Probably not many people would
You
care
could
as
put
much
it in
about
the
it.
thrift store and some person would be like, oh my god, I have to have this shirt, like thrift shopping.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You can go to work.
I gotta
Yeah.
go. I gotta go to the pharmacy. Pick up my drugs.
Okay. You
Gotta pick up some drugs that'll wreck my gut biome.
Oh my god.
Hell yeah.
Bought some kombucha.
Yeah, gotta get that kombucha
Yeah.
after you wreck your biome.
Oh, dude.
Too bad
Kombucha.
Too bad I returned that book. That audiobook about the
I
gut.
got enough out of it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll see you tonight.
Nance, you can't judge
So-
kombucha until you've tried them all.
Yeah, the kind
No,
that tastes
yeah.
like
They're all
vinegar is
different.
the best.
I've had some good kombucha, but
had
most
some
of it
good
is not
kombucha.
good.
That's good. That's good. Okay, love you.
Okay, love you, bye.
Bye.
I am. Yeah, like if this is Moseley's position, like if he's like this, if what he's saying is his actual position, then I'm like, oh, okay, I disagree with Moseley. Because he's doing this thing where he's like ontologizing this abstract value, which I believe through my reading of Marx, and like I believe that's wrong. First of all, I believe it's wrong. Second of all, I believe I'm supported by what Marx is talking about. Third of all, I don't care what Marx is saying. Ultimately, I think I'm right about it.
Yeah, that's one of the main things I keep thinking about is like, if the value for Marxists are wrong in their actual reading of Marx, they might be
sign me
smarter.
up.
They might be smarter than Marx is the issue here. Like there's a real okay, on this issue. I'm not saying like as
Then
individuals.
maybe we
or
can
whatever.
move on from Papa Marx in this case.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, the specific question here right now is Moseley, Heinrich, Marx.
Right.
I'm still on Team Heinrich. And this, so far, these first 3 pages or whatever, have not warmed me up to Moseley at all.
Yeah.
But I do want to read his. I do, like you said, if he would have led off with Heinrich,
with his critique of Heinrich, I would have, because I do care more about his critique of Heinrich than his position if this is his position.
Yeah. All right. So and the thing is this will then probably be a sort of authoritative traditional reading of this chapter. And therefore, for instance, like if you want a good opportunity to really lay out in an analytical, rigorous, and systematic way an argument about value, having this, what you said, triangle between these three, that gives you everything you need to do whatever you need to do. So it's like, yeah, I like it. I'm not like I said. Well, when I'm talking about how I would have thrown this book 5 years ago, it's because I would have been like, because back then I only cared about whether I agreed or disagreed, or if someone seemed wrong, and then move on. And it's like, no, but now I really want to tarry with it and think it through and then be able to say it. And if I can't say it and actually write it out in a systematic, rigorous way, then I'm full of shit. So,
yeah, well, and like I think there's a better way to articulate the way capital works than value, right? Use value, exchange value, sign value. I do, and that revolves around waste. So getting my chops on value for me personally, like that is great because it will allow me to, first of all, figure it out and hear and say, oh, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I can't move on from value as such. So there is definitely a lot of value in doing this. So.
And I think the time energy theory of value for me and my project is like, I don't think things have an inherent value. It's obviously a subjective value. I say in my actual thesis that the debate between labor theory of value and subjective theory of value, which is basically, supply demand, scarcity. I say like they both still boil down to time energy. And the reason they boil down to time energy is because you would or could do everything yourself if it wasn't for the finitude of your time and your energy. And so nothing that is a product of labor has value outside of time energy. From the subjective standpoint, from the intersubjective standpoint, I don't think it makes any sense to talk about objective time energy. I don't know.
I think it could, like having time energy as the referent, right? As the super subjective referent. Instead of worrying about objective value, like using time energy allows you to cut through
those kinds of
and put an objective or a super subjective number on it to each and every individual that remains consistent, but of course it's always going to be relative. I love it. And it does do away with traditional theories of value because it's actually asking the question, does this have value for you? And without that for you or for whom, I think the question of value is incoherent anyway. And I think Marx is also explaining that. Like he's saying this idea it's a fetish. That's what he's saying.
I think so too. Now the way that time energy theory of value is not just the question of whether it's valuable to you though, is because that would be at the level of like Husserlian intentionality, which is like Heideggerian concern. We're talking about, is this useful to me? I'm looking at an object and I'm thinking about it. As opposed to the background conditions of intelligibility that render this being foregrounded possible. And so, you know, your sewage functioning in the background, there is a value in that. And yeah, now we can go back to saying it's still subjective because, yeah, if it stopped working and then you were living in a shithole all the time, like, you would not like that. Right. So we can always bring it back to that. But without you actively thinking about whether you value it or not, it is still functioning for you in a way that makes it possible for you to pursue the things you care about. So yeah, I mean, so I'm just saying, like, it'll never just be the objects. It'll also be like the larger system.
But there is still there is this focus on utility. There is always this question of in order to, and like for the sake of which, right, that make it real. Trying to do this abstraction is pointless. Like, unless we were just really passionate about economics, which we're not just really passionate about economics, right? Like, we want to make this shit real.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is exchangeability should have nothing to do with it. I feel called to do this thing. Instead of being able to do this thing, say, teaching philosophy, I have to go to work. I have to pay my bills. And then people, Ricardo, through seemingly Moseley, they're going to turn around and say, but yes, of course, you put your labor power into Amazon. Other people put their labor power into building your home, into getting loans for your home, into paying mortgages off on your home. Like, it's everyone's putting their labor power towards all of these different things. That gets you money, right? Like, money becomes the way of exchanging these goods and services that are only possible because of this congealed labor power that it's all ultimately making, and it's all only exchangeable through the money form because of this, and they wouldn't say suppose, they would say objective phantom-like value. So
yeah,
and I'm just like I don't care. I don't care. To the wall with these guys. I don't care. I want to teach philosophy. I don't care, Dougie, about any of this fucking bullshit that you're trying to fucking force down my throat. I shouldn't have to read Capital. The reason I'm celebrating Capital for now is because I live under it. But I don't want to. I want to be Timenergy rich. And Capital does not make that possible. Because Capital does see labor power as a commodity. And it's legitimation narrative for labor power being a commodity in the first place is all of this stuff that Moseley's talking about here, which is like, that's where the fucking
and that's what
rubber meets the road.
It blows my mind. Like, that's what Marx is doing. Marx is cutting through all this bullshit, and he's saying, like, look, these objective things, they come from our situatedness. They come out of the context. They emerge from the system. It's not that they're real, it's that they're constructs. And I'm laying out this analysis that allows us to see them as constructs. So, and that's what I struggle to wrap my head around. I guess Moseley here in this instance, or people who are saying no, value is this concrete thing that's produced in production. It's like, do you believe that, or are you saying that the system presupposes that? Because yes, the system presupposes that. But we're in on the fact that it's bullshit. That's what I wonder. And I don't know. Like, is Moseley saying it's real, or is Moseley saying it's bullshit? I don't know. I can't tell.
We'll find out. Yeah, we'll keep going. But this is good though. Yeah. Also, I think this is more valuable. I want to know, in terms of the waste theory of value, I've always thought about it as just being capitalism is producing waste, and I've always thought about pollution and landfills and strip mining and just the non-renewability of it. And then you also got me thinking about how it also means planned obsolescence. But have you already also been thinking about the opportunity cost of your time energy lost when you're not able to pursue your calling or discover your purpose? That's never even been on the...
No, but that fits right into it because it is like, I've definitely thought like death and decay is also a driver, and that the lost opportunities goes right hand in hand with that as a driver.
Like a perfect example is like right now you have all of these 30 to 45-year-old people throughout my life in different states, in different income brackets, in different careers, in different classes, all saying the same fucking thing. And they've been saying it my entire life. Oh, if I'd only learned more languages when I was a child, because it's easy when you're a child. So they all understand the sense of opportunity cost loss. They all get that. But it's like, bitch, you're still 30 to 45. Like, you can do anything right now. Anything right now. But they're setting themselves up to be 80 and stupid and boring. That's what they're setting themselves up for. And the thing is by the time you're stupid and boring at 80, I'm sorry, no one's going to want to visit you. You're just going to say the same old shit. You're going to get dementia. I'm sorry. This will sound brutal coming from me. Someone's going to be like, that's my grandpa. Yeah. That's why I hate capital, bro. Like, that sucks. He's been robbed of his life. If people don't want me to say it, that's like people not wanting you to say that someone's homeless. I'm sorry. It sucks.
Yeah.
You don't make it less sucky by not saying it. In fact, I think you make it worse. Point it out that it sucks. So it's just like, and now that loss would be like an existential opening point into a whole area of that theory. I'm just saying, like, because that is like it's intuitive. People get it.
Yeah. And like now people don't even have to confront the fact that they have boring old people to go visit, because they can just get an AI companion to hang out with them and spend time with them, and we don't even have to be confronted with it. So it's at the level of ideology, it's at the level of material conditions. Like it's such a built-in part.
And the irony of it, the sick, sad, and twisted nature of it is that there's child slaves mining the cobalt for the robots who are going to stand in for the lack of a relationship that you were not able to develop because you were too busy working so hard so that you could pay for the retirement home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then people are like, well, our lifespan is expanded. And it's like, dude, I'd rather die at 40 and not have to work. Shut the fuck up.
And when people do this thing of like ontologizing value, that only supports that cycle of working to stay alive so you can continue working, so you can continue to be productive from the standpoint of capital. Like ultimately, when you go along with it, like when you allow this mysterious phantom that the system itself posits, when you take its word for it, when you take capital's word, you're reifying it. And that's why it's like, it's such a sticking point for me. And I don't know, maybe it is tarnishing my reading of Moseley.
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's not, when you say that he's ontologizing value, it's like he's doing that for capital, dude. Like,
that's it. You're doing the thing that capital is doing. Marx comes along and says, you're wrong. That's the fetish. That's this mysterious thing. Let's interrogate this mysterious thing. That is what Marx is doing. And when people come on the back of that and say, no, value is this concrete, actual thing that is imbued in commodities through the process of production, it's like you fell for it. You took the bait. Because that's what capital wants you to do.
So
whereas a time energy theory allows you to get outside of that and say, no, that is meaningless. I don't care. That doesn't matter. Like on a level, of course, we can presuppose heterogeneous and homogeneous labor, and we could say like, we all have chores to do. We have to wash our ass. We have to wash the dishes. We have to build the house. We have to chop down the trees. We have to produce the food. We have to do all these things.
And anybody who takes 7 hours to wash the dishes, like, we're not going to be like, oh yeah, we want your help on these other things. Like, no, fuck you, dude. Like, we don't give a shit, because like we could do that in 10 minutes. Like, so efficiency, being effective, like the use value of the time spent and the socially necessary average of the time that you're approximating as the standard that shows us that you're either good or bad at something. So what I'm saying is like against socially necessary labor time, if I chop 3 cords of wood in X amount of hours and you chop 3 cords of wood and it takes you 3 fucking days, it's like, you suck. Like you literally need to learn how to do the thing. And the reason we know that is because of this idea of socially necessary labor time. It's not that socially necessary labor time is not real. Like it's just the average time that it takes to do a thing. And if someone fucking sucks at it, it's like, find a different thing to do, man. And maybe you'll actually need some help with that. Like, for instance, we could be less brutal. Like, maybe just like someone's got a handicap, they actually can't do it at that. It's like, okay, cool. Then we'll have to just figure some shit out for you. Don't worry about it. But like but what capitalism does, and now we're being good Heinrichian value form Marxists when we say this, capital turns around and uses the intuitive nature of that idea of socially necessary average labor time, and then it bludgeons us with that into thinking that that's the basis of value, that that's the basis of money, that that's the basis of wage of our wages, that that's the basis of, and then there's this idea of like wage exploitation. Like, you could get paid the right value for your wage. You could be making Taylor Swift bobbleheads, you're working 14 hours a day, and you're arguing that you should only have to work 10 hours a day and that you should be paid $3 more per hour, and that your children should have the right to go to school. And people are like, yes, that's the labor struggle. When it's like, no, we shouldn't be making Taylor Swift bobbleheads first. You shouldn't be working more than 2 days a week. Second, your kids shouldn't even be in a school in anything that's setting them up to be either a worker or a manager. Third, right? Like, you go down the line, and that's all just like that's what time energy theory is going to do, is like peel back that mask. Whereas, like, the most militant supporters of the rationalization narrative for capital itself are its most supposedly vehement critics. And then there are Leninists, and PMC theory's already shown us that, like, essentially, centralize everything underneath like a handful of people who believe this, and then they'll tell you to get back to work, and then they've got your interests in mind, and then they'll raise your maybe you'll get compensated better for a while. So it's like, maybe I'm catastrophizing. I hope I'm catastrophizing. I hope that I watch this in the future and I laugh at myself, and then I go hang out with Moseley and we're like, oh, we're so sorry, we misinterpreted you so poorly. I'm open to being wrong about it still, but at this point, this is really, really, really bad writing. And of course, from Moseley's standpoint, it's great writing. I'm pretty sure like his homies were all like, this is fantastic, you're nailing it. But here's why it's bad. Good writing that aims to convince people who don't already agree with you should start with Heinrich's argument, embody it, feel out why it matters, why anyone would care. Feel that out, inhabit that space for a while, and then if you want to be convincing, just at the level of rhetoric, you gotta fucking preempt everything we've already said. If you're not preempting this shit that we're saying, we have the right to be reacting this way,
Yeah.
right? Because he hasn't preempted it. And so I think this is almost just like a good lesson for the writer's workshop at Theory Underground. Guys, like, for real, it just because it makes sense inside your head doesn't mean it makes sense to other people. You have to make it make sense to other people, which means you have to practice empathy, and not in like this, oh, I'm going to be compassionate and hold space kind of sense, but instead you have to actually try to be like, okay, the person I'm arguing against, why might they believe that? And then you have to actually enter that space and be like, why do I believe that? Kind of, you know, contingently while you're there. And you have to like kind of inhabit it. You have to make sense of it. And it's like, because it's politicized in this case, or with Heidegger, it's like the interpretive position is always like so resolute. And it's like, you got to be able to move out of your position, think about that other position, come back into that position, right to that position you were in. And the thing is if you are also really doing the thing, then that means you've been doing it as a lifestyle for probably 10, 20 years. And if you've been doing that as a lifestyle for 10, 20 years, sometimes when you go inhabit some other sphere, you don't go back except to imminently critique, because you realize you were wrong in the first place. Because if you're not, it's not just like empathy to be rhetorically savvy. It's like, no, but you also might be wrong. That's the basis of intellectual integrity. If the possibility of being wrong is not on the table, intellectual integrity has already been foreclosed. This is why, like, I think that Daniel Tutt is a great example of a Marxist who's open to being wrong. Like, he wrote a piece called, like, do academics change their minds or something like that? I saw it on his blog. And that's fantastic. But also at the Comic-Con, what was it called? That's not Comic-Con. Ping Pong Pizza?
Comet Ping Pong.
Comet Ping Pong. Yeah, at Ping Pong Pizza. At Comet Ping Pong, he said, we have the truth. And when he said it, I remember thinking, like, the truth, man. Like, that's a big statement, you know? It's like, I'm not so sure that any Marxists have the truth. Like, I think that the truth actually can withstand misinterpretation. The truth can overcome propaganda. Like, truth is something that you shouldn't have to, like, talk for like 100 hours to get the truth across. You know, like, the fact that Marxists have had as long as they've had and they haven't grown their ranks is almost a sign of there's something going on here. You know, like, there's something gone stale. There's something that's not matching up to reality. And so it's like part of the project is to be like, what is the situation? What is the reality? How has the reality changed so that the old concepts don't match up? But then also, how have those old concepts, maybe they failed to actually even map the territory in the first place, or they were misunderstood in the first place. And this right here, bringing it all back around to Moseley, this is at least according to Heinrich, and for now we're convinced, this is the why it matters. It's because they keep interpreting these passages this way, as I did also when I first read this, right?
I think I like the idea of them positing this kind of labor theory of value, absolutism or whatever, to say, like, yes, the thing that capital uses as value to be this process of expropriation and exploitation, that thing is created by abstract human labor. I'm okay with that. I like that, because yes, it is the case that capital is turning our time energy into this labor time and this labor power.
Yeah, for sure.
So that, and maybe that's just a way of saying it. But I want to be charitable and at least believe that some of them are saying, no, this value, it's not an objective thing. It's not a real thing. It's not a concrete thing. It is this bullshit fetish, but also here's where it comes from. But it sure doesn't seem like that's what they're doing a lot of the time when they're doing it. I don't know.
it's like they're like labor all the way downists, right? Like they literally believe that everything is labor and it's labor all the way down. And that's because they don't, it's like without time energy, it's like, it really is just labor all the way down. But it's like you're ontologizing what's been made normal as natural, and it's not natural, and it shouldn't be normal. So, all right.
All right.
So we're going to close out because we think that that's a good place to end. We think that that's we really made our point, and we want you to sit with it and think about it and check us if we're wrong. We want you to read ahead on this text. We want you to go back, re-listen to the stuff we've already done in this playlist for this podcast, on these YouTube videos, wherever you're watching this, however you're hearing this, just go back, go over it, or you skip to the next video once it's out, and maybe we'll be humbled. And because I plan on binging as much of this as I can later in the week to kind of just like, I want to be able to just say, like, is he digging himself deeper and deeper for the rest of the book, or does it go somewhere that we don't see it going? Like, is it going to surprise us?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see, because right now it doesn't look good for good old Freddy boy.
Yes, and Dr. Moseley, if you're watching this, please be a little generous or gracious with us, as we have not been with you. We're trying to be with you, and we're definitely welcome. We're going to welcome you on anytime to have a conversation about it. But I hope that you see why I'm more doubling down on this is not the right way to write this to be convincing to someone coming from our standpoint, which is working class, warehouse working, like time energy centric and reductionist post-Marxists. Like, if you want to like sell us on something, like you gotta know where we're coming from, and it does feel like this kind of just has like a particular audience in mind, and it's an audience that we can't make sense of, and we just are lacking the shared assumptions to really be able to work with what we have here. And part of the reason is because I used to be into the labor theory of value. I got into this value form shit. I'm also the time energy theorist, right? And so it's like my book, Time Energy, is why I care about the value form theory. Like, so it's like, I mean, if you can sublate both for me, that would be great. I mean, I would love it. I'd publish you doing so. But the issue is that it doesn't seem like that's where you're going. And so, you know, I don't mean to get out ahead of ourselves too much, but this is React content ultimately. So we might have to walk it back, but I think it seems like you're ontologizing this labor power thing.
Look, man, if we're wrong, fucking tell us. Because again, it does matter. We're genuinely engaged in this line of study. It's not like we have commitments that we're trying to, honor. We're not trying to score points. Like, no, we want to get to the bottom of this, right? We want to smell what Marx was stepping in.
And then figure out for ourselves whether he was right or not. But it's just like it's hold on, let me do the thing. Fuck, I get to finally do it. Check this out, everybody.
Do the thing. Do the thing.
So let's talk about hermeneutics for a second. Does this work?
Oh, your mic's down.
Oh, hold on. And so for you, Nance, it's gonna look like, like I'm all zoomed out or whatever, but from OBS's side, it's much better. So first of all, it says we only work on this because it was in a shoebox, but also I felt like it's relatable. I guess just like I want to show a very simplistic picture of how I think of the issue, the hermeneutical issue here. And for those who don't know, hermeneutical just means interpretive, but it signifies the actual discipline of hermeneutics, which is important. You can't lose that. As soon as you say interpretation, you lose the fact that it's actually... How do I open this pen? There we go. As soon as you say interpretation instead of hermeneutics in this context, you're losing the fact that it is a discipline, meaning that there's like a responsible way of going about things and like doing it methodologically. And we're not exactly like experts or anything when it comes to this discipline. Like, we're not super well versed in hermeneutics or anything. But I just want to I want to... S is for situation. And so we have Marx's situation. I'm going to put a little M beside S. So can you see that okay, Nance, or is it too far away for you?
Yeah, I can make it out.
Okay. I don't want you to have to make it out. I'm going to zoom in for you. Here we go. Let's see. Let's get you in here so you can see it. Whiteboard. There we go. Now Nance can see it just like everyone else. That looks a lot better, right?
Perfecto.
Yeah. So we've got S, M, and then we've got S, N. That's Marx's situation, and that's now. So this is the now situation. Like, I'm just improvising. But SM, SN. And obviously, there's a sort of infinite number of situations between here. Right? Right, this is like, this just goes on and on and on. So we could talk about SL. That's Lenin's situation. Before that, we could have talked about SK. That's Kautsky's situation. And part of the point is, I mean, at least when we're talking about like Heinrich's way of talking about what Marx sees himself as doing, is trying to come to the ideal average functioning of capital itself, so that it shouldn't matter which we're in, right? But on the other side of his situation then is, I don't know, like what I just like there's a couple levels of complexity. I'm trying to figure out the best way to show this, because there is Marx's interpretation of that situation, which is not the same thing as that situation. If he's doing a really good job, then it's approximating that situation adequately, right? And that's a great thinker. You're a great thinker if you're able to talk about your world situation in a way that is, people are like, oh, wow, you said it best, right? Like, absolutely. Okay, so we've got the Marx interpretation of the situation. I guess over here, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that blank. Whose interpretation of the current situation? Of course, there are people now trying to act as though they have Marx's actual interpretation. They're trying to, first of all, they're trying to eradicate this difference. They're trying to act like there is no difference between Marx's situation and Marx's interpretation of that situation. So they collapse that distinction altogether. And then they want to act like it's the same thing over here now. And it's like, there's no reason to believe that. I have no reason to believe that whatsoever. And so, now if people want to make that case, at the fundamental level, nothing has actually changed. Capital, maybe it entered a monopoly phase, maybe it entered a finance phase, maybe it entered a consumer phase, maybe there's the imperialism factor, maybe there's the labor aristocracy factor, maybe there's the professional managerial class factor, maybe there's the increased automation factor, maybe there's the platform capitalism factor, the surveillance capitalism factor. There's all of these things. And you're saying, but it's the same thing. And I'm just like, cool, well, you know, that's not convincing. But if you can show me how it's all the same while giving all of those things I just said their fair treatment, then I would be like, fair enough. Okay. But then outside of, so this is another layer of complexity, outside of the interpretation of the situation, Marx's situation, there's, let's just say, us or you. Right? Let's just, so like, you being the viewer, whoever's thinking about this right now with us, all right? You have an interpretation of Marx's interpretation of Marx's situation, okay? And then there's the translation question. There's the translation, what gets lost in translation, what gets added in translation, and all of the, and I'm going to go ahead and just say, like, now you, in your interpretation of Marx and his interpretation and of his situation, the actual barrier of translation itself not being like on the table and taken super seriously as it goes means, I'm just going to put noise here. There's a lot of noise that, like, over the, couple hundred years here, there's a lot of noise. And so it's like, this, like I said, I'm improvising. I just wanted to have fun on my whiteboard, but this is the short version of the situation as I see it. Like, our situation, I'm going to just do S, and then T, and then U. So there's the theory underground situation, all right? And it's Dave, it's Nance, it's Ann, it's Mikey, and a ragtag team of satellites and fellow travelers, okay? Brian, you know, outside of this, you know, outside of like us and what we're doing here, we've got our interpretation of it. Now, I don't know, is there a symbol for not total or non-totalizable or not all, like how Lacan would say? Like, is there a way of like undermining this being an aggregate and instead, like, the point is like, I'm going to put infinity there for now. The point is like that this is not reducible to a totality. It's the opposite, right? You could say that our situation is a totality. I'll just draw a circle versus a infinity, right? So it's like, you could say the situation is a totality. There is an actual objective situation. But then there's like our interpretations of that situation, right? Now, of course, like, we want to be good, 11th thesis on Feuerbach and like get away from interpretation. But we can't talk about what Marx was talking about without admitting that he was interpreting his situation, and then admitting that we are interpreting his situation through him as well as other people's accounts. And then there's this whole stretch of history between then and now that we also have to interpret, because it's not just that there's noise along the way in terms of translation. There's also like others interpreting. That's the problem. Like, all of these guys are interpreting, and so it's like Marxists don't do much outside of interpreting. So yeah, we want to get back to changing the world, but we first have to like unravel this problem, and so it's like part of that is taking responsibility for how we interpret. Like, we actually, that's the point of Theory Underground. And so I'm going to put a line here between the Theory Underground situation and the now situation, because like the Theory Underground situation is nested within the now situation and is trying to understand the now situation. That's the real goal, right? So yeah, anything you would want to add to that or change here? Any levels of complexity you want to throw in on it, or thoughts?
Yeah, I think even with like interpretation, translation, I don't know, just the idea of communication in the first place. Like we should problematize. I don't know. Like like when you're reading and you're trying to interpret something, you have to go deeper than just the words on the page. So
Right.
yeah, and I guess that is just kind of standard hermeneutics, but people don't read that way.
Yeah, that is exactly. That is, well, and that's, we were just talking about this earlier. It's like we're trying to
Yeah.
rediscover how to do that. And I think that there's this older sort of intellectual vanguard that figured it out a long time ago, forgot they figured it out, or maybe they never really actually figured it out. From their standpoint, they thought they figured it out, but then they stopped talking about. It's like, that's the thing. If you're not talking about interpretation and translation actively all the time as a part of the intellectual vanguard, I start to wonder if you're really doing it, or if you're just at that point. Are you what are you like? I don't want to say a charlatan because that's a much more extreme word, but maybe a sophist. Like, you've got something to sell.
Yeah.
You're a worldview salesman. You got something to sell. You're out here doing it. And I wouldn't say
You're
that doesn't.
You're an influencer.
That doesn't mean you're not a true believer.
Right.
But yeah, you're an influencer. Yeah, that's a way. That exactly.
Yeah, like that's a contemporary way to say, like, you're just doing the thing, and you don't even have to moralize there. You can just say, like, functionally, you're not doing the thing you think you're doing. You're doing nothing but pushing a narrative and trying to capitalize on some influence.
Right. And so, that's the thing, is like, we live in a post-trust age, and rightfully so, and people need to be able to think for themselves. The resources to be able to think for ourselves have not been made readily available. There's libraries full of books, and there's an internet full of information, but there's not a thoroughgoing conversation, much less reliable sources of instruction or guidance when it comes to translation, interpretation, theorization, systematization. All of the things that you got to do with data and information are things that we just don't have readily available. So there we go. I just wanted to do that.
So it is, I mean, we have kind of, I guess, come out strongly, a little bit absurd, a little bit spectacular. And that is missing the point. That's not the point. The point of this really is to kind of understand what's going on now, what was going on when Marx was writing, what Marx was saying,
Right.
and all that stuff. And maybe we're totally wrong. That would be great, because I know I'm not totally right. Because, like, if I was totally right about everything, then we're fucked, and we truly are doomed, and there is no hope. So I don't ever want to be totally right about everything. Maybe, I don't know, just like, maybe I want to temper some of the shit we said a little bit. Like, it is a little absurd and silly and ridiculous, and that's because of the form of the content that we got going up. But
Yeah,
I don't
dude.
want to just do that. Like, I don't want to, I don't know, subscribe to a YouTube channel and be like, yeah, that guy is right about everything he said, and he understands Marx, and also Marx had some, like, secret pact with God to let him know the secrets of the universe, and we have the capital T truth. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. No. And so anyway, I hope that people will take this as a friendly invitation to take it seriously and roll our sleeves up and actually get into it. Because, like, I don't know, that fellow who commented on our first reading of Heinrich, who said, I don't go with Heinrich, and then, like, went on to, like, say, like, the reasons why, and it was saying, like, basically Heinrich is saying the extreme opposite of production as the sole source of value, which is that like exchange basically like renders any value created in a production like null and then like recreates value, which is seemingly absurd from our reading. And I was like, where does he say that? Can you show me where he says that? Like, can you and then he just goes into this big old thing about how, oh, you know, well, Andrew Kleinman already proved Patrick Murray wrong. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about. Now I have to go look up who Andrew Kleinman is, and I have to go look up who Patrick Murray is, and that's still not the actual book that we just took all of this time and energy to read for you all. And so, Nance is saying he wants to be wrong, and he wants to be in the company of people who can show him that he's wrong. And our part of the problem that we were in here is that like someone like that commenter just doesn't have the time or energy to actually get to the bottom of something either. He probably heard that shit on a Reddit or heard that shit in some Marxist forum, and now he's like, yeah, that's what I heard. But he didn't say that's what I heard because he just wanted to get the thought out. But it's fine. It's fine, guys. All I'm trying to do is raise the standard of criticism so that we're actually able to go along with it and come to this moment where we realize where we're wrong, how we're wrong, and how it can be fixed. Because, it's about truth. It's about understanding. But with that, we're about to close this thing out. Any last thoughts?
No. Get it on like Donkey Kong, man. I'm looking forward to finishing this up and reading another book about chapter 1.
Yes.
And then reading another book about chapter 1, and then going back to chapter 1 because I really want to get onto chapter 2, but that all is ahead of us before chapter 2. So I'm fucking stoked, man. It is like put up or shut up. We're not here to have arguments on the internet. We're really here to get to the bottom of the issue. So like, yeah, the comments are totally welcome. But like, if you're going to take the time to say we're wrong, like do a little bit of explaining.
We won't say you're mansplaining. I promise. All right. Peace.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is a publishing house as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run a review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy. I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books, one, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of Underground Theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working-class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels, or a couple big time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm.